During my last race in the International Racing Championship, I suddenly had a flat tire. The car overturned. The cars behind me crashed into me one after the other. After 99 collisions, I was seriously injured. Just as I instinctively reached out to my boyfriend for help, he pushed me away forcefully. My condition was already very bad. "Don't dirty my new suit today." He turned around and picked up the champion who had just crossed the finish line. He smiled and twirled around. "Sophia, only the trophy of the champion is worthy of you. I will help you remove all obstacles." My clothes were stained red with blood. I watched the two people embracing in the sunset. I felt disheartened. What he didn't know was that among these bloodstains was also the blood of our newborn child. At that moment, I decided to stop loving him. I was being crushed under the deformed car. My vision was blurred by the blood. I felt warm liquid flowing from my lower body. I reached my hand out the window as hard as I could, waving at Ethan, trying to call for his help, but my throat couldn't make a sound. I wanted to tell him so much. "Hurry and save our baby." He kicked me away violently, frowning as he looked at the suit pants stained with my blood. Disgusted, he said, "You're so dirty. Don't get my new clothes dirty." Without hesitation, he walked past me. He walked quickly towards the woman who was receiving an award. His pace was fast but steady. At that moment, I heard Ethan's soft voice in my ear. "Sophia, congratulations on winning the championship." "Thank you, Ethan. Without your help, I wouldn't have won this championship." Her voice sounded sweet and clear. After I heard it, it felt both familiar and a little strange. I had heard this voice several times on Ethan's phone. Every time I asked him a question, he always said I was too sensitive and too controlling. I was afraid he would leave me, so gradually I stopped asking. He said, "I knew you could win the championship. I have already booked a restaurant. We will celebrate with you, Sophia. Everyone should go and share in the joy." As soon as Ethan finished speaking, there was an immediate burst of cheers. Then the voice of the assistant suddenly cut in, breaking the lively atmosphere. "What about Emily? Is she still under the car?" Ethan paused. His tone became cold and resolute. He said, "These racing cars are all custom-made, equipped with anti-collision functions. The way she looks now, she probably wants to get my attention. In that case, let Emily stay here and calm down. No one should go near her." After he finished speaking, there was a moment of silence. Someone whispered, "But isn't Ethan Emily's boyfriend?" Ethan's eyebrows knitted together. He immediately spoke up to stop the speculation. "Don't be ridiculous. I only work with Emily. My heart belongs to Sophia. She is my only girlfriend." Everyone was shocked to hear this. I lay there, my face covered in tears. I couldn't tell if they were blood or tears. Ethan never admitted that I was his girlfriend, even though we had been living together for 3 years. They hugged and kissed like a couple. They even had intimate relations. They did everything couples do. However, he told everyone publicly they were just partners at work. He also made it clear that his girlfriend would only be Sophia. I tried hard to stand up, but my body wouldn't obey. I fell back down. I wanted to question him. What exactly were the 5 years I spent with him? I opened my mouth, but I couldn't say a word. Tears and blood ran down my face together. Sophia threw herself into Ethan's arms. Hugging her tightly, Ethan said, "You actually waited for me this long." Ethan didn't wait for him to finish. He kissed her directly. Their breaths mingled together. It gradually became quiet around them. I was left behind like this. The pain was unbearable. I closed my eyes helplessly. Later, I was awakened by a voice. When I opened my eyes, I saw the ceiling of a hospital. I heard a conversation. "Ethan, Emily's leg has recovered. She can continue racing. Are you really going to cripple Emily's leg? If Emily's leg still has feeling, give her an injection to make her leg useless. The racing world only needs Sophia as a legend. As for Emily, I will take care of her for the rest of my life." Ethan's tone was cold, without a trace of emotion. He clearly knew that racing was the thing I loved and longed for most in my life, because of Sophia. He broke my leg. The wound seems to be hurting again. My whole body hurts. In that case, Ethan, I no longer need racing or you. I reached tremblingly for the phone on the table. I dialed the number I had memorized long ago. My voice was hoarse. I said to my mother, "Mum, I've decided to stop racing. Come and get me in a week." I didn't finish my sentence. My whole body was aching again. In a daze, I remembered the past. My father had been a racing driver, but he was disqualified because of his alcoholism. After that, he became short-tempered and irritable. Whenever he got upset, he would beat me and my mom. My mom couldn't take it anymore. She finally decided to divorce him, but she left me behind until I turned 18. He had a car accident. My life gradually improved. However, I fell in love with the sport of motor racing, which had ruined my father's life, until I met Ethan when I was in college. He spent money to set up a racing team and promised to help me become world champion. For the past 3 years, he and I have worked hard together. Everyone thinks that our relationship is extraordinary. In order to win the championship, I was once knocked off a cliff during a race. 3 nails were driven into my knee. It hurts every time it rains. Because of this injury, my physical condition has become very poor. It has made it difficult for me to get pregnant. Whether it's for Ethan or my own dreams, I'm willing to give it my all. Later, I finally managed to get pregnant with his child. I was going to withdraw from the final competition, but he said he wanted to see me win my first Grand Slam. Unexpectedly, he just wanted to use me, to make his beloved Sophia famous. In order to stop me from participating in the competition, he even injured my leg. Anger and pain pierced me like a knife. I really regret it. I regret that because I longed for Ethan's tenderness, unwittingly fell into his trap. I also hate myself for being unable to judge people correctly. I was taken advantage of by him. Suddenly, Ethan's voice sounded in my dream. I woke up suddenly. Ethan frowned and looked at me. He gently took my hand. His tone was gentle. "Emily, I'm really sorry. I didn't expect you to have a problem with your health. The doctor said he needs to examine you again, to see if your leg can continue racing." My eyes became hot. I shook my head quickly and said, "No need. I can't feel anything in my legs at all." Ethan gently patted my phone number. He comforted me and said, "Don't think like that. You haven't reached that point yet. Listen to me. Let the doctor try again," facing his determined gaze. I had no choice but to nod my head in agreement. He nodded at the doctor. The doctor understood what he meant. He immediately went to prepare the tools. He glanced at me. His eyes were full of sympathy and reluctance. "You really need to do this?" I couldn't help but ask again. Ethan frowned. His tone was a little serious. "Don't be difficult. This is for your own good." The doctor was about to do it. Sophia pushed open the door and walked in. "Ethan, I studied joint movement abroad. Let me try on Emily. After all, Emily is like this because of me." Ethan suddenly let go of my hand. He walked quickly towards Sophia. He stopped, looked at me, then said to the doctor, "Since Sophia wants to try," he gestured for the doctor to hand her the tools. Sophia held a small hammer in her hand and walked towards me step by step. Her eyes were full of ferocity and smugness. "Emily, I'll be gentle," she said gently, but only I knew how heavy the force was when she smashed it down. A dull pain radiated from my lower body. I clenched my lower lip. I held back the sound. The cold sweat on my forehead soaked my bangs. "Emily, can you feel it?" Sophia turned around. Her back was facing Ethan. Her gaze fell provocatively on me. "No, I endured the pain. I tried hard to stay calm." "Emily, I'll try it with a syringe." Sophia stuck the thick needle into my thigh. I clutched the bed sheet tightly. I held back from screaming. I knew, once I made a sound, more unbearable pain would await me. "That's enough, Sophia. Emily's leg may no longer be able to function. Let the doctor handle it." Ethan pursed his lips. He reached out and blocked Sophia. His eyes looked at me with a hint of reluctance. "Emily, even if you can't move your legs, I'll find you a logistics job. You won't be idle." His words no longer stirred my emotions. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, trying to ease the stabbing pain. At that moment, Sophia's voice came, sweet with a hint of indifference. "Emily, you take care of your health. When Ethan and I get married, I'm counting on you to be my maid of honor." After they left, I looked down at my legs. I couldn't help but laugh at myself in my heart. A maid of honor on crutches, or a maid of honor in a wheelchair. Sophia really knows how to embarrass me, but now I don't care anymore. I looked at the message on my phone. There were still 5 days until that day, since the doctor diagnosed me as being unable to get out of a wheelchair for the rest of my life. Ethan's gaze on me became complicated and determined. He took me back to the villa, but I found that the room that originally belonged to me had already been occupied by Sophia. She stood in the doorway, her hands on her chest, raising her eyebrows at me. "I'm sorry. Emily, Ethan said I could choose any room I wanted." I stared coldly at Ethan and asked, "Where am I going to live?" Ethan froze for a moment when he heard me call him that. There was a little disbelief in his eyes. I had never called him Ethan before. "Emily, don't get upset. Sophia's back is not feeling well. The mattress in your room is specially made. It's good for Sophia's back. Sweet memories from the past suddenly came flooding back. My heart couldn't help but ache. At that time, I had an accident. I was in bed for 3 whole months. Ethan was worried that I would be uncomfortable lying down and had a mattress custom made for me. Now, I remember how deeply I was moved back then, and I feel the same pain now. I'm acutely aware that Ethan doesn't love me. I suppress the pain in my heart and ask him again, coldly, I'm not angry. Ethan, where should I stay? There's a room that's perfect for Emily to recover. I'll wheel her there. Sophia takes the wheelchair from Ethan and took me to the darkest room on the first floor. As soon as the door opened, dust blew in. The room was pitch black. There wasn't a speck of light. I'm sorry, Emily. All the other empty rooms are full of my things. You'll have to stay here for now. Sophia's tone was apologetic, but her mouth was curled up. It was obvious that she was in a good mood. I stared at the dark room. Sad memories from my childhood flooded back. I squeezed Sophia's hand. I frowned at her. I'm not staying here. Is there another room? I'll go to a hotel. What, you're not staying? She was taken aback. She quickly pulled her hand away from me. I didn't realize Ethan had followed me in. I looked up at him. My eyes held a hint of expectation. Sophia suddenly wrapped her arms around Ethan's waist. Leaning her head on his chest, she sobbed softly. The room was quiet. No one would disturb them. This place was quite suitable for Emily to convalesce, but she didn't like it. She insisted that I change her room. My hands were red from her scratching. After she finished speaking, she raised her hand in front of Ethan for him to see. Ethan gently blew on her hand. His face was full of concern. Then he turned his head and shouted at me, Emily, don't sulk. You have to live in this room. The hope in her eyes disappeared once again. My chest tightened. Pain followed. He knew I was afraid of dark rooms, but he still chose to support Sophia. He said yes. I gave a bitter smile. I wheeled myself into the room. The room was full of clutter. There was a thick layer of dust on the surface. I didn't know how long it had been there. The small bed in the corner was cold and hard. After a while, I heard a rustling sound outside the door. I was startled. The fear I felt as a child came flooding back. I hurriedly turned on the flashlight. Unexpectedly, Sophia had returned. In her hand, she waved the pregnancy test I had hidden. She walked up to me, lowered her head, grabbed my collar, and said with a hint of glee and malice, Emily, I knew you were pregnant a long time ago. I just hinted at it to Ethan, because I wanted to win the championship. So, he sabotaged your car tires, so you had 99 collisions, which eventually caused you to miscarry. Even if you were with him for 3 years. What's the point? As long as I wave my hand, he'll come over obediently. What are you saying? I looked up sharply. My eyes filled with anger. I had naively thought it was an accident. I never imagined that it was all a trap set by Ethan. I always hoped to have a child. A family member related to me by blood. The doctor told me, because of long-term physical problems, I can only have this one child in my life. From the moment I knew I was pregnant, I started imagining her arrival. I have fantasized about it countless times. However, the two of them completely shattered my hopes. I felt a force erupt from within me and tightly strangled Sophia's neck. I said to her, You really have brought this on yourself. If you want Ethan, then go ahead. Sophia's face turned red. She struggled desperately, shouting hoarsely, But you shouldn't have killed my child. She broke free of my grip with both hands and turned to go. I immediately wrapped my arms around her legs and bit down hard. I could taste the taste of rust on my tongue, but the anger in my heart was still burning. I confronted him. What are you doing? Ethan shouted angrily. Then, he kicked me hard in the stomach. I stared at him, still refusing to give in. He froze for a moment, seeing the hatred in Sophia's eyes, but her cries for help brought him back to his senses. He continued to kick me hard, angrily shouting, Let go, Emily. The pain in my lower abdomen reminded me of something from my childhood. I felt scared and helpless. I let go of my mouth. Blood dripped from the corner of my mouth. I held my hands over my head. My body shrunk into a ball. I kept shouting in my mouth, Don't hit me. I was wrong. I dare not do it again. Sophia's eyes were red. She looked straight at me. Ethan stepped forward and tried to continue kicking me, but he stopped himself. He frowned. Sophia didn't dare move when she saw this. Ethan looked at me. His eyes showed a little regret and pain. Sophia was about to walk towards me. Suddenly, he grabbed her. She immediately cried out, Ouch, it hurts. Ethan, my leg hurts really bad. I have a competition the day after tomorrow. Ethan didn't hesitate to pick Sophia up and walked straight upstairs. Before leaving, he said sternly to me, "Emily, think about it. Think about it carefully." He slammed the door. I was still deep in those dark memories from my childhood. My tears kept flowing. It was as if I could still feel the pain of the beating. It wasn't until the cold floor brought me back to reality. My eyes were vacant. My eyes were dry. I mechanically pulled out my phone. I glanced at the date. I tried to lift the corners of my mouth. I managed to force a smile. There were 48 hours until that moment. "Ethan, I'm leaving you the next morning." Ethan let me out. He stood high above me, looking down at me and said, "Emily, you need to apologize to Sophia." I sat on the floor, leaning against the side of the bed. I had no intention of paying him any mind. "Did you hear me? Emily, if you don't apologize, I'll let you go." Ethan's voice got louder. The veins on his forehead bulged. His eyes were cold as he looked at me. "The people you love always know how to hurt you. I've long since lost my home. What does it matter if I get kicked out? I don't care anymore." I looked up at him coldly and spat in his face. "Don't think about it." After that, he couldn't hold on anymore and fainted. I was taken to the hospital. When I woke up, there was only a nurse by my side. Ethan and Sophia had already left for a car racing competition abroad. I looked down at the watch. There were still 12 hours left. "Mom, do me a favor." After sending the message, I ate a few mouthfuls of food. Then I asked the nurse to walk with me nearby. When we passed the Bay Bridge, I suggested going over there to see the scenery. While she wasn't looking, I jumped. I closed my eyes. The moment I hit the water, I whispered to myself, "Ethan, goodbye." Ethan watched Sophia's racing video. He felt a strange sense of unease. Just then, Sophia made a mistake. Ethan shouted, "Sophia, what are you doing? You're drifting at the wrong angle. You turned the wheel too early." Sophia was distracted by the constant criticism. As a result, she made more and more mistakes. The cars behind her passed her one after the other. After the race, Sophia took off her helmet and threw it angrily on the ground. She lost her temper with Ethan. "Stop it. It's all your fault for giving me bad advice. If you hadn't told me to do that, I would have won." Ethan's forehead veins bulged visibly. He tried to calm down. He said to Sophia, "You have made so many mistakes, but you blame it on me for not giving you enough instructions. If Emily were here, she would never make such a mistake." As soon as Sophia finished speaking, her eyes welled up with tears. She looked aggrieved and said, "I already knew it. You are still thinking about that woman. If that's the case, let Emily take part." Ethan's tone softened. He felt a little sorry for her. He was about to comfort her when his phone suddenly rang. He answered it. He heard the other person say, "Emily jumped into the lake and killed herself." This news made him freeze. His mind went blank. His hand trembled. He almost dropped the phone. He felt as if something was slowly leaving him. He calmed down. He told his assistant to book the nearest flight. Then he hurried to the airport. When Ethan arrived at the Bay Bridge, the caretaker immediately handed him the pregnancy test report in his hands. Ethan took it and looked at it. His face instantly turned pale. His lips trembled slightly. His heart was filled with remorse and self-blame. How could I have done such a thing? You must find him, whether he is alive or dead." Those were the last words. His voice was almost inaudible. Ethan stood on the bridge, looking at the surging river below. His eyes were vacant. The assistant sent a message, "Ethan, we've been searching for a day. We still haven't found Miss Emily. Miss Emily, has she been swept downstream? Keep looking." Ethan's eyes are red. His tone is resolute. He stares blankly at Emily's WeChat profile picture. That's a picture he took of Emily when she won her first championship. Later on, Emily never changed her profile picture. He clicks on her picture. He finds an unread voice message. He clicks to listen. A voice came from the other end. "Emily, I knew you were pregnant a long time ago. I was the one who secretly tipped off Ethan. I wanted to win the championship. He tampered with your car tires. As a result, you suffered 99 collisions. You eventually miscarried." Sophia's cold voice came from the other end of the phone. It made him tremble. He held the checklist tightly in his hands. Ethan had never hated himself so much. He had actually let a woman with an evil heart had killed his child. I lost Emily, who loved me so much. Recalling the way I treated her rudely afterwards, a huge stone seemed to weigh on my chest. It made it difficult for me to breathe. My heart ached. Ethan felt that Emily must have been in more pain than he was at that time. He suddenly froze. He didn't know what had come to his mind. He snatched the car keys from his assistant's hand. He ran back to the villa as fast as he could. He looked around the villa for traces left by Emily. But he found nothing. He understood. Sophia had already disposed of those traces, the beautiful memories between the two of them. He had lost them. Sophia's laughter came from the bedroom. Ethan was really confused. How dare he blame me? At the beginning, I just showed a little weakness, and he hurt Emily for me, helped me set up the scene. I heard that the woman and child are gone. I'm leaving the country tomorrow. Let Ethan regret it. Hearing this, Ethan was furious. He rushed forward, grabbed Sophia by the hair, and slapped her hard twice. He said angrily, "It's all because of you that Emily left." Sophia shouted from inside the door, "Help, I was wrong." I felt myself being surrounded by the cold lake water. Luckily, someone rescued him in time, but he was too weak and passed out again. I opened my eyes dazedly. I heard a woman scolding. "Emily, are you out of your mind, sacrificing your body for that silly boy Ethan? Is it worth it?" I shouted, "Mom." My voice was a little hoarse. It didn't sound very forceful. I realized that I was wrong. I promised her that I would spend more time with her in the future. My mother looked at me. Her eyes were red. She reached out and wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes. "Don't go to any more car racing competitions. Stay by my side. Your mother still has some savings. It's enough to support you for the rest of your life." I nodded. After she divorced my father, she met my stepfather. My stepfather is an overseas Chinese. He took my mother abroad. After she settled down, she came back to see me. At that time, I was deeply immersed in the bright future that Ethan had painted for me. I couldn't extricate myself. Besides, my mother didn't want me to race cars, so I refused her offer to take me abroad. I understood that, even if we didn't meet, she was still quietly looking after me. After learning what had happened, my mother severely reprimanded Ethan on WeChat. She usually looks so elegant, but when she gets angry, her words are really frightening. It's all for my sake. My stepfather has always followed my mother's lead, working quietly behind the scenes. He's a very kind man. When my mom gets angry, I'm always there to comfort her. He reassured me, "Emily, don't worry. Take care of your health. Your leg will be fine." It seems like no one has cared about me for a long time. Now I feel so warm inside. It's so good. I rested in bed for 2 months. My body finally recovered. Back in the country, Ethan's car company announced the termination of its partnership with Sophia. Subsequently, they posted a video on Weibo of Ethan speaking for himself. In the video at the top of the page, Ethan looked completely different from usual. His eyes were bloodshot. His hair was a mess. His suit was crumpled. His voice was hoarse. His eyes stared straight at the camera. They were full of emotion. Due to some misunderstandings, I broke up with my beloved girlfriend, Emily. She has now left me. If anyone has seen her, please contact. I didn't feel like watching anymore. I turned off my phone. Watching Ethan put on a show of affection made me feel really uncomfortable. There's no such thing as a do-over in life. The pain I've experienced is something Ethan can't truly understand. I wasn't in a very good mood. My stepfather suggested I go for a drive. He got me a car. When I got it, I felt warm inside. It had been customized to my liking. As I cruised along the road, my previously irritable mood suddenly became relaxed. Suddenly, a supercar sped past me. It even flashed its headlights a few times on purpose. This immediately piqued my interest. I immediately stepped on the accelerator. The engine roared. I quickly caught up to it. The two sports cars raced after each other. It made me feel like I was back in a race. Finally, I seized the opportunity. I took a beautiful turn and passed him directly. When I stopped the car, the other person also rolled down the window. What came into view was a handsome and delicate face. A few months ago, we had just met at a competition. "Ryan, why is it you?" Ryan's eyebrows lightly raised. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Hi, Emily. When did you come abroad? I have to be a good host. Take Emily to have a good time." Influenced by Ryan's mood, I nodded. Before that, should we do it again? I didn't wait for an answer. I stepped on the accelerator and drove off quickly. Ryan looked in the direction I had gone. He smiled and shook his head. He immediately caught up. Ryan is the key player in another team. The two of us often won first and second place in competitions. Last time, I heard that he was called back by his family to take over the family business. I have to say, ever since Ryan came along, my life has actually been quite fulfilling. It's just that my mom is always worried that I'll go back to racing. She was about to nag me when my stepdad talked her out of it. After Ryan and I finished racing, he handed me a can of soda. I leaned back lazily. His eyebrows rose slightly. There was an emotion in his eyes that I couldn't understand. My heart tightened. I quickly took the soda and quickly looked away. Emily, don't fall for another man. Haven't you learned your lesson? After a long while, he asked, do you still want to continue racing? He turned his head and leaned closer to me. He whispered Emily. The last syllable of the word rose slightly. His eyebrows and eyes were so delicate. They made me a little lost in thought. I haven't decided yet. Just do as my mother says. I suddenly felt that I was leaning too close. I quickly backed up. I almost fell, but he caught me in his arms. He looked at me. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Should we consider getting married? His voice was soft and seductive. He put his arm around my waist. His fingers lightly touched my skin. My face suddenly turned red. I still have things to do. I'll go first. He let out a soft laugh. The sound came from behind me. I lay on the bed, tossing and turning. I couldn't sleep no matter what. As soon as I close my eyes, what happened that night comes flooding back. It doesn't let me rest. Calm down. You must calm down. My mother opens the door and comes in. She sees me tossing and turning in bed. She smiles and asks me, Ryan confessed his love to you. You look so happy. He can't help but think about his past experiences. His excitement suddenly subsides. I shake my head. There's a moment of silence. My mother sits down next to me. She takes my hand and says, Emily, if you really like him, go for it. Ryan is a good boy. Mom thinks he's a good guy. But Mom, you know, my body is no longer able to conceive. I'm not good enough for him. Why should I burden him, seeing my resolute attitude? My mother shook her head. Ever since I knew that Ryan had a crush on me, I didn't dare to race with him anymore. His family definitely wouldn't accept a wife like me. Instead of dragging on, it's better to end it cleanly. Ryan came to see me twice. I found excuses not to see him. My stepfather's business was in trouble. He needed to hold a banquet to attract investment. My mother asked me, Emily, do you want to go? You can meet some new friends. The days without seeing Ryan were really boring. I nodded. I originally wanted to find a quiet place to stay. Unexpectedly, trouble found its way to me. Suddenly, there was a pop. My wine glass was smashed. A woman dressed in flashy clothes appeared in front of me. She was followed by a few people. She said, you are the one who seduced Ryan, and you rejected our family's marriage proposal. I frowned and explained, I have nothing to do with Ryan. The other party responded, if Ryan didn't fancy you, it must be because you are not good-looking enough. My words made her even more agitated. Quick, grab her. The woman behind me suddenly rushed towards me and grabbed me tightly. I asked in panic, what do you want? I stared at the woman in front of me. A sneer appeared at the corner of her mouth. She reached out and pinched my face. How dare you call me ugly? I'll smash your face in. She lifted her hand sharply and brought it down hard on my face. I couldn't just stand there and take it. I stepped on a few of the women's feet, making them let go of me. Then I grabbed the person in front of me directly by the hand and slapped her across the face. What are you doing? A low, powerful voice came from behind me. It was familiar, yet strange. I didn't expect it to be Ethan. Then Ryan's voice came. He exuded a frightening aura. He said, Linda, I told you, I don't like you. This has nothing to do with Miss Emily. Next time, I'll tell your grandfather. Ryan's words made Linda bow her head. She covered her face and gave me a fierce glare. Then she stormed off. Ethan frowned at Ryan and asked me, who is this, Emily? I tried my best to suppress my disgust and looked at him coldly. Ethan, we are not related anymore. I don't need to introduce you to my friends. You are not welcome here. Please leave immediately. After I heard that, I turned around and walked away. Ethan kept begging from behind, but no one paid any attention to him. A photo of Ryan and me racing had been posted online. Ethan found out where I was through one of the photos and followed me all the way to my stepfather's party. Ethan planned to come visit me at home, but my mom had the nanny throw water on him. My mom also told him, Ethan, I'll tell you this, unless I'm dead. You'll never see Emily again. Ethan's tone was full of remorse. Auntie, I really know I was wrong. Please let Emily see me. No, I will never forgive you in my life. I pushed open the door and walked out. My gaze was calm, without fluctuations, as if I were looking at someone I had never met. I stared at him, pursing each word. Forgive you? Will my child come back even if I forgive you? Will I be healed from the hurt? Every time I think of those 99 impacts, my whole body aches. You're like this. How can I forgive you? As I finished each sentence, Ethan's face grew more and more unpleasant. His eyebrows were tightly knit. His eyes were red. He grabbed my hand, trying to explain. These are all Sophia's lies to me. It's all her fault. I've already injured her leg. She can't race again in her life. As long as you are willing to forgive me, we can start again. I shook my head. I was getting more and more disappointed with Ethan. I said, "You're always like this. You hurt me for Sophia, and you hurt Sophia for me. The main problem is that you're too selfish and not smart enough. Leave. I won't forgive you." I tried to break free from his grip, but Ethan held on tight. Suddenly, a fist slammed into Ethan's cheek. Ethan immediately recognized Ryan. He was the guy who raced me earlier. He turned around and looked at me with a slightly questioning look in his eyes. He said, "You won't forgive me because of him." Ryan answered for me. "Ethan, I really despise you, what you did to Emily. It's not an exaggeration to say that you're a mean person. I don't usually swear. I only lose my temper with unreasonable people." Hearing Ryan's words, I couldn't help but laugh. Ryan was right. Ethan really was being unreasonable. My laughter angered Ethan. He immediately rushed up to fight Ryan. He couldn't beat Ryan. He was pinned to the ground by Ryan, unable to fight back. "Ryan, stop." I told Ryan to stop. I pulled him into the house, leaving the injured Ethan outside. I was just about to let go, but I noticed that Ryan was staring at me intently. He was different from usual. His eyes were fixed on me. My heart started beating faster. "Emily, you're holding my hand. Don't you like me a little?" He looked at me with such intensity. His eyes were full of love and sincerity. The previous conflict and hesitation gradually dissipated. I took a deep breath. I led him into my room. I cleared my throat. I told him everything that had happened. As I spoke, my hands unconsciously clenched the hem of my shirt. I was afraid to see his disappointed expression, but Ryan gently lifted my chin and kissed me directly on the lips. "Emily, this is my answer. Everything is Ethan's fault. He doesn't know how to cherish. From now on, I will love you." At this moment, my world went from desolate to warm because Ryan appeared. My mother was worried that something had happened to Ethan in front of my house, so she found someone to take him to the hospital. And after Ryan found out that I had accepted his advances, he pursued me even more. He was so happy. He looked as if he had a tail. It must have been wagging high in the air. I just didn't expect Ethan to give up. He brought the injured Sophia to me, dragging her along like she was something he owned. "Emily, look, I brought Sophia." Ethan kicked Sophia angrily. "You apologized to Emily." Sophia's face was covered in stains, and she smelled bad. She whispered, "I'm sorry, Emily, please forgive me. Tell Ethan to stop picking on me." I looked expressionless and stared coldly at Ethan. "This has nothing to do with Sophia. Ethan, I hope you'll stay out of my life from now on." Ethan was enraged. He hit and kicked Sophia and kept saying, "It's all your fault. If it wasn't for you, Emily wouldn't have left me. I'll teach you a lesson." He looked like a different person. He was no longer the gentle Ethan I had first met. Perhaps this was his true self. Seeing Sophia's bruises on her face, I felt a little sorry for her. "Stop it, Ethan. If you let 99 cars pass you by, I'll consider forgiving you." My words gave him hope. "Really, Emily?" I nodded. "But you have to take Sophia with you first." "I'll take her with me." Sophia was dragged into the back seat like a rag, just like she came. I thought Ethan was joking. I didn't realize he had actually found 99 cars to crash into himself. When the assistant dragged him out from under the racing car, he was unrecognizable. His whole body had become unrecognizable. His face was ruined. He was completely disabled. Ethan still wanted to find me, but the Chen family locked him up. At least someone went to save him, but no one came to save me at that time. Sophia was also taken away by her family. I stayed with Ryan, but Ryan's family didn't approve. After that, we lost contact. Ryan was very determined. He took me home and bowed to the head of the Ryan family, saying, "In the past, because Emily had someone around, I gave up. But this time I will never let go. If you don't agree, I will have to leave with Emily." Later, I cried bitterly. Ryan held me and whispered soothingly, "Don't cry. It's all over now." In Ryan's eyes, I was like a child who needed his love and affection. There is always someone in this world who will pick up the pieces of your broken heart and cherish them for the rest of your life. Ryan's family eventually gave in to Ryan's insistence. They had no choice but to agree to our marriage. However, Ryan lost his inheritance. Fortunately, he still had a few small properties. It was enough to support the two of us. Later, we decided to return to the world of racing. Before long, a husband and wife racing team emerged. Whenever they entered a race, they always won. At the same time, I had some good news. I was pregnant. Seeing Ryan's stunned expression, I couldn't help but smile. It turns out that being loved really can make a person feel alive.